Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you today about a woman who lives alone. No friends, no texts ringing in the night, no girl you busy calls, just silence. Some of y'all hearing this already got a picture in your head, and maybe you're thinking, that sounds sad. But let me stop you right there. See, the world teaches us that being alone is some kind of punishment, like it's the worst case scenario in life. But let me tell you something. It takes real strength to stand alone in a world that keeps telling you to fold. This woman, she don't need a crowd to know her worth. She wakes up every day and makes her own coffee in her own peace, in her own quiet, and sometimes in her own pain. But she gets up, and that right there, that's strength. Now don't get it twisted. I'm not saying she doesn't feel lonely. Oh, she does. She feels it when the holidays roll in and nobody knocks on her door. She feels it when folks around her are making dinner plans and all she's got is leftovers and silence. But loneliness doesn't mean brokenness. Sometimes it means you've outgrown the noise. You ever been around people and still felt alone? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Some folks drain you more than the silence ever could. Some of us need a season of isolation to detox from the drama, to learn the sound of our own voice again, to figure out who we are when nobody's looking. Now, maybe she wasn't always like this. Maybe she trusted too many, loved too deep, gave too much. And when they left, she was the one picking up the pieces, so she decided, no more. She built a wall, not to keep people out, but to keep herself safe. But here's the thing, walls can protect you, but they can also trap you. And while solitude can be healing, we weren't made to do life completely alone. So to the woman living like this right now, I see you. You are strong, but you don't have to carry it all alone forever. Start small, smile back, answer that message, show up somewhere you don't have to go. Bit by bit, open the window, then the door, because somewhere out there is someone who needs you. Someone who prays for a friend like you. So let's stop judging the woman who walks alone. Let's stop whispering about the neighbor who never shows up to the barbecue. You don't know what battle she's fighting. You don't know what strength it takes just to exist another day. And to the woman who's listening, you are not forgotten. You are not invisible. Your story ain't over. Sometimes life empties your circle so you can hear your calling. So you can learn that your own company is enough. Until love finds you, until friendship shows up again, and when it does, it won't be fake. It'll be earned. You keep walking, queen, even if it's alone. Loneliness doesn't mean weakness. It can be a sign of strength. That's something we all need to stop and really sit with for a minute, because the way the world talks about loneliness, you'd think it's a curse. We hear about it like it's some kind of failure. Like if you're sitting in a restaurant alone, sipping on a cup of coffee with nobody across from you, then somehow you must be broken. People see you walking alone, dining alone, even living alone, and they whisper. They wonder, they pity, but what they don't see is the power behind that quiet walk, that solo dinner, that peaceful home. Because being alone is not the same as being weak. In fact, it might just be one of the strongest things a person can do. See, it's easy to blend in with a crowd. It's easy to lose yourself in other people, to fill your life up with noise and distractions, so you don't have to deal with what's really going on inside. Anybody can pretend to be okay when they've got 100 people around them laughing and talking. But the truth shows up when the music fades, when the phone stops ringing, when there's no one left to perform for. That's when you meet the real you, and facing that silence, that takes courage, that takes guts. A woman who lives alone without friends isn't someone to pity. She's someone to respect, because she's waking up every morning without anyone checking on her. She's making her own meals, fixing her own problems, and crying her own tears without an audience. She's living a life that most people couldn't handle for a week. There's no one there to hype her up, no friend group to gas her up on Instagram, no texts flooding her inbox reminding her she matters. But still she gets up, still she moves, still she keeps going. Now tell me that's weakness. You can't, because that's strength most people never tap into. And let's be real, some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who have been through so much that they had to learn how to walk alone. They didn't choose loneliness, but they chose peace. They chose themselves after being overlooked, underestimated, or hurt too many times. Maybe she was the friend who always showed up, but when it was her turn to be loved back, nobody came. Maybe she was loyal to people who used her kindness, who took her light but never poured anything back into her. So she stopped trying, she stepped away, and the world looked at her like she gave up, but really, she just chose not to break. When you've been burned enough times, the absence of people can feel safer than their presence. And that kind of solitude, it doesn't come from weakness. It comes from survival, from wisdom, from self-respect. You don't build that kind of life overnight. That's built on battles fought behind closed doors, prayers whispered in the dark, and decisions made with tears on your pillow. And still, she shows up to life. Still, she manages to smile some days, even when no one sees it. Still, she does the work, pays the bills, holds it down. That kind of strength deserves recognition because it's not loud, it's not flashy. It doesn't walk into a room demanding attention. It's quiet, it's humble, it's real, and in a world obsessed with followers, likes, and social validation, choosing solitude can feel like rebellion, but it's not rebellion, it's healing. It's growth, it's clarity. Some people don't find themselves until the crowd is gone, until the only voice left is their own, and it's in that quiet, in that space that the strongest version of them is born. So when we see a woman living alone, we should stop assuming she's broken, stop assuming she's sad, start recognizing that maybe she's just tired of fake connections. Maybe she's doing the work to rebuild herself. Maybe she's finally learning that her worth was never tied to how many people liked her, called her, or wanted to be around her. That's not weakness. That's a woman who's standing on her own 2 feet, even if they're shaking. The strength to be alone, truly alone, and not lose yourself in the process is something very few people ever learn. So the next time you see someone walking this life solo, remember, they might be walking the hardest road, but they're walking it with their head up. And that kind of strength, that deserves nothing but respect. Isolation can teach you what people can't: self-love and resilience. That's a truth many folks don't realize until life pushes them into a corner. We're raised to believe that being surrounded by people means we're successful. That if you've got friends texting you all day, a family that visits every weekend, coworkers that invite you out after hours, then you must be doing something right. But let me tell you something. Some of the most valuable lessons you will ever learn in this life won't come from a friend's advice or a family gathering. They'll come from the quiet moments when it's just you and your thoughts. When the room is still and the world feels far away, that's where growth happens. See, when you're surrounded by people all the time, it's easy to let their voices drown out your own. You start adapting. You start changing to fit in, to belong, to avoid being left out. Sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny, agree with things you don't believe in, go places you don't even want to be. You start to lose yourself piece by piece. But isolation strips all of that away. There's no one left to perform for, no one to impress, just you. And that's when you meet the real version of yourself. At first, it's uncomfortable, it's quiet, too quiet. You reach for your phone, but no one's calling. You scroll through old pictures just to feel connected to something. You might even cry, and that's okay. That's part of it, because isolation brings all your hidden emotions to the surface. The fears, the insecurities, the pain you've been carrying around like luggage you forgot to unpack. But in that uncomfortable space, you begin to heal. Not because someone told you how, but because you had no choice but to sit with yourself and figure it out. You learn how to be kind to yourself, how to speak life over your own soul when no one else is doing it. You learn how to forgive yourself for things you've been carrying for years. That's what self-love really is, not just bubble baths and spa days, but being able to sit in your own mess and say, I still love me. It's waking up on your worst day and deciding you still matter. It's not waiting for someone to validate you, not needing 1,000 compliments to feel worthy. That kind of love can only be taught by time spent alone. Time spent looking in the mirror and seeing not just what's broken, but what's beautiful too. And once you start loving yourself like that, everything changes. You stop chasing people who treat you like an option. You stop begging for attention from folks who only show up when they need something. You stop tolerating disrespect in the name of keeping the peace, because now you've found peace within. You've tasted the power of your own presence, and let me tell you, once you know how to be okay alone, nobody can use your loneliness against you. That's when you become truly free. Now let's talk about resilience, because isolation builds that muscle too. When you've got nobody to lean on, you learn how to lean on God or faith or whatever it is that grounds you. You learn how to get up when you fall, even when there's no one cheering. You learn how to keep pushing, how to motivate yourself, how to dry your own tears and say, we're gonna be all right. That's not weakness. That's survival. That's power. Life doesn't always go the way we planned. Sometimes people walk out. Sometimes they hurt you. Sometimes they forget you. And you end up in that quiet place you never wanted to be. But that place, that's not a punishment. That's a classroom. It's where you learn who you are when everything else is stripped away. It's where you discover your worth isn't tied to other people's opinions. It's where your roots grow deeper, your heart grows stronger, and your spirit becomes unshakable. So don't fear the seasons of isolation. Don't see them as setbacks. See them as sacred, because the lessons you learn there, nobody can take them from you. They become part of who you are. And when the world tries to knock you down again, and it will, you'll remember what you learned in the quiet. You'll remember how to stand, how to fight, how to love yourself even when no one else does. And that, right there, is the kind of power people spend a lifetime trying to find. We often judge the silence of others without knowing their battles. It's almost second nature, isn't it? You see someone who keeps to themselves, someone who doesn't join the conversation, someone who sits in the corner quietly, and you start making assumptions. She's rude. Some might say, he thinks he's better than us. Others whisper, or worse, she must be miserable. But what we don't realize is that silence is not always sadness, and solitude is not always a sign of suffering. Sometimes that silence is where someone is hiding their pain. Sometimes that quietness is the only thing keeping them from falling apart. People carry things we can't see, wounds that don't bleed on the outside, stories that are too painful to tell, scars that don't show up in photos, and yet, because someone doesn't laugh loud enough or show up often enough, we label them, we box them in, we say they're weird, cold, antisocial. But what if that woman sitting alone has been through something that's changed her view of the world? What if that man who avoids small talk has learned that words can be dangerous when given to the wrong people? What if that young girl who never smiles is just trying to survive a storm nobody knows about? We're so quick to speak on what we don't understand. We see the outside and we think we know the story. But people are deeper than that. Life is more complicated than that. Sometimes silence is the armor people wear after being betrayed. It's the shell they crawl into after giving too much and getting nothing in return. It's the pause they take after years of pretending to be okay. Silence can be strength, it can be safety, it can be healing, and yet we treat it like it's a flaw. Some of the kindest, most thoughtful souls are the ones who talk the least. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they've been taught that not everyone listens, or worse, that their voice doesn't matter, so they retreat, they choose quiet, not because they want to be invisible, but because they've been hurt in the spotlight. They've been judged too harshly, misunderstood too often, and left too many times. So now they sit with themselves in a silence that makes others uncomfortable, but one that has become their only comfort. And we, on the outside looking in, miss it completely. We call them standoffish. We think they're difficult, but we don't ask why. We don't look deeper. We don't wonder what it took for them just to show up that day. Because if we did, we might see the bravery in their silence. We might see that being quiet is not the same as being broken, that being distant is not the same as being heartless, and that just because someone doesn't express their pain out loud doesn't mean they aren't carrying a heavy load. You never really know what someone's going through. That woman at the grocery store who didn't make eye contact, she might be grieving. That neighbor who never comes to the block party, he might be battling depression. That coworker who always eats lunch alone, she might have been hurt by people she once trusted. Not everyone who is silent is lonely, and not everyone who's surrounded by people is happy. Silence is not a measure of someone's worth or emotional state. It's a sign that they're human, navigating life the best way they know how. We have to stop reading people by the cover they wear. We need to stop assuming that just because someone's quiet, they have nothing going on. Some people are fighting wars inside their minds, wars with anxiety, with past trauma, with fear. Some are rebuilding after being torn down for years. Some are finding their voice again after being silenced for too long. And the last thing they need is judgment. What they need is grace, understanding, compassion. So the next time you see someone who seems distant, who seems silent, pause before you judge. Consider what might be hidden behind that stillness. Maybe what you're seeing isn't coldness, it's protection. Maybe it's not pride, it's pain. And maybe, just maybe, if you sat beside them in silence instead of pointing fingers, you'd be offering more healing than words ever could. Because sometimes the quiet ones are the loudest fighters. They just choose to battle in the dark, hoping someday someone will understand without needing to hear the whole story. You don't have to stay alone forever. Healing is a journey, not a sentence. A lot of people forget that part. When life breaks you, when people walk away, when trust is shattered and love feels like a memory you can't reach anymore, it's easy to believe that this is it. That the loneliness you feel right now is just how things are going to be. You tell yourself, this is my life now. And you start to build walls instead of bridges. You stop hoping. You stop trying. You convince yourself that you're better off alone, not because you want to be, but because you're afraid to try again. But just because you're alone now doesn't mean you always will be. Just because you've been hurt doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. Healing takes time, it takes work, it takes courage, but it doesn't mean you're meant to stay in that empty place forever. People think healing is a straight line, that one day you just wake up and everything is better. But that's not how it works. Healing is messy. It's waking up one day feeling like you can take on the world, and the next feeling like you can't even get out of bed. It's smiling at strangers some days and ignoring your phone the next. It's trying to move forward while still feeling like part of you is stuck in the past. And that's okay. That's normal. Healing isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about accepting that things weren't, and slowly finding your way back to peace. When you've been alone for a long time, you start to believe that you're hard to love, that maybe you talk too much or feel too deeply or expect too much from people. You start to shrink yourself to fit into the boxes others created for you. But the truth is, the right people won't make you feel like too much. They'll make you feel like you're finally enough. But before they can come into your life, you've got to do the hard work of believing that you deserve them. And that belief comes from healing. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't build healthy relationships if you're still carrying the weight of old ones. That's why the season of being alone matters. It's not a punishment, it's preparation. It's where you learn how to love yourself again, how to set boundaries, how to say no without guilt, how to stand on your own 2 feet without depending on someone else to hold you up. When you've done that, when you've walked through the fire and made it out stronger, then you're ready, not just to be with someone, but to be with someone in a way that's healthy, whole, and real. But let's be honest, healing can be lonely. It can feel like no one sees the work you're doing, like the world is moving on while you're stuck in place. But you have to keep going. You have to keep believing that this season of loneliness is not your final destination. You have to remind yourself that just because love hasn't shown up yet doesn't mean it never will. And just because your past was painful doesn't mean your future will be too. There's no shame in taking your time. There's no weakness in choosing to step back from relationships until you're ready. That's not giving up. That's being wise. That's choosing healing over rushing. That's deciding to break the cycle instead of repeating it. And that takes strength. Someday, someone will see you for who you really are. Not just the polished version you show the world, but the real, raw, healing, beautiful soul that's been through things and came out wiser. But until that day comes, be proud of the progress you're making. Be proud of the way you keep showing up for yourself, even on the hard days. Be proud of the tears you've cried, the boundaries you've set, the moments you chose peace over chaos. That's healing. You don't have to stay alone forever. This moment right now might feel long, it might feel hard, it might feel endless. But it's not the end. It's just a chapter. The story keeps going. Love will come, friendship will come, laughter will return, but first you have to come back to yourself. And when you do, when you finally meet yourself again with love, grace, and acceptance, you'll realize that healing wasn't just a destination. It was the home you were trying to return to all along. So when you see a woman living alone, walking her journey in silence, don't assume her story ends there. She may be in a season of solitude, but not of defeat. She's learning, she's healing, and she's rising, one quiet, powerful step at a time. Because loneliness isn't her weakness, it's been her classroom, and when the time is right, when the healing has done its work, she won't just re-enter the world quietly. She'll come back with a strength forged in silence, a heart rebuilt with self-love, and a spirit that refuses to be broken again. That kind of woman doesn't need saving. She's been saving herself all along.